Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to this impromptu little stream. Every bloody stream ends. Anyway, welcome to this impromptu little stream, and as always, I'm going to start us off with a tune. Okay, that was Garverville Gall, a very fine young Scotsman who's in my Discord. And obviously the illustration was the 42nd Highlanders, the Black Watch, in North America during the 7 Years' War, which our American cousins call the French and Indian Wars. So there you go. I was watching a AA stream a few days ago, and I like Academic Agent on the whole. I don't always agree with him, but I think he's got a good and entertaining channel, and he's got a lot of the best people on the right who appear on it. But during that stream, Sargon of Akkad, aka Carl Benjamin, as we all now know him from the Lotus Eaters, came on and said that he didn't care if Britain broke up. He said it didn't make any difference if Britain broke up. In fact, he would like Britain to break up. And if Britain had no influence in the world whatsoever, that would be a good thing. And to be honest, I think that is utter nonsense. Now, Sargon of Akkad, aka Carl Benjamin, has been on a journey like many of us over the years. I mean, I used to watch Sargon of Akkad pretty regularly back in, I don't know, 2017 or what have you, when he was still on his Gamergate kick and he was doing his anti-feminism stuff, and all of it was very good and absolutely correct. But he was way to the left of me back then. And I still think he's a fair bit to the left of me even today. And I am by no means a third position person. If anyone thinks that, I'm not. I'm not sure if I'm a sensible centrist, but I am absolutely a Anglo-Celtic nationalist, I guess I would describe myself, and a traditionalist reactionary. But, if Britain broke up so that we lose Scotland, if Britain loses Scotland, then Britain's almost certainly going to lose Northern Ireland. And then you're going to have England and Wales. Okay, now, all right, Wales may or may not break away as well. Wales is a principality rather than a nation, but, whatever. But that would make Britain something like a 2 to 3 times more powerful and richer Belgium, which is far too small to be really independent. I constantly see people on the British right saying that Britain needs to break free of the so-called special relationship with the USA. And I have a number of problems with the so-called special relationship with the USA, which is only special when the Americans want it to be, in my opinion. But a Britain that is even smaller than that is like, it's just not possible for that sort of an England on its own, or even England and Wales on its own, is not forgive me, is not large enough to be really independent. I mean, Britain as it is, with England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, is only barely big enough to be independent if we had a decent political system, which we do not. But if we did, then yeah, we maybe could break free that way. But England and Wales on their own, no, it's not going to happen. Too small, too weak. Carl Benjamin also said he doesn't care if Britain has any influence around the world. Well, Britain has 14 overseas colonies. Today, in 2023, Britain has 14 overseas territories. And at least 2 of them, i.e. the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar, me as an Englishman and a Briton, I would actually fight a war to keep British. And I don't know what Carl Benjamin thinks about that, but I certainly would. Like, fuck the Spanish, fuck the Argentinians, I'm sorry. Like, those places are British and have mostly populations who want to remain British. And they're white populations, for those of you who are concerned about those things. But yeah, so I just think he's wrong about that too. I was posting some stuff in my Discord earlier, and I'm going to read a bit of it to you. So anyway, where are we? Sorry, this is an impromptu stream, dudes. I wasn't planning on doing it, but I just saw more and more stuff, and I thought, okay, we'll do it. Someone posted a thing in my Discord about some Irish phenotypes, okay? Now, my mother was half Irish and half Welsh. My dad was almost all English except for a bit of Scottish, and I think I've got one Spanish great-great-grandmother who I'm eternally grateful to, because it means I tan in the sun rather than burn. I was born in 1965, and as a teenager, and I was born in a place called Bermondsey, which is like absolutely central South London. It's the opposite side of the River Thames to the East End, basically, and very similar. And I had quite a few English Catholic mates, both when I was a teenager as a civilian and when I joined the army at 18. And many of those dudes were over 50% Irish descent. But it didn't count for much to me, and it didn't count for much to most of them. There were 1 or 2 exceptions, but it did mostly not count much. And like when we did our first tour in Northern Ireland, it didn't matter a shit to the pirate bastards. Provisional IRA would have killed us, all of us, without even thinking about it, because we were all wearing the same British Army uniform. And for anyone who cares about these things, officially, I'm Church of England, for whatever little that counts today. I mean, it doesn't count for much at all, really, does it? Given the state of the Church of England today. But, you know, the DNA of all the Anglo-Celtic people of the British Isles is really fairly closely related. And my son might even count as more English than me, since his mother's family were all English, other than one Scottish grandfather. So I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Like, my son might be more English than I am. But if someone asks me, I'm an Englishman, because that's what my dad was and his granddad was, and I'll be an Englishman until I draw my last breath. But, you know, whatever. So anyway, yeah. I just I hope that what I've just been saying will explain why I'm a British and not merely an English nationalist, and why I don't agree with Colin Sargon on this subject. I reject all Englishmen who say eject Scotland, for example, because if you do that, not only will you lose Ulster, because you will if you eject Scotland, and that's a lot of very loyalist British people, you're also abandoning huge numbers of very good loyalist Scotsmen, many of whom are actually serving in the British Armed Forces as we speak. You know, these people are here. Brian Borrow in the chat is saying many IRA were ex-British Army. I wouldn't say many of them were. There were some. Yeah, of course there were some. But they were very, very, very much a minority, Brian. I'm sorry. They just were. And the IRA killed quite a lot of English in inverted commas, British Army soldiers. They did, and they killed a hell of a lot of Irish, not in inverted commas, British soldiers. So, you know, they didn't give a shit. And this is the same provisional IRA, Brian Borrow, who these days are all in favour of mass third-world immigration into Ireland. You know, Brits out, Somalians in. Is that what you want, Brian? Because I doubt if it is, really, if I'm honest. But yeah, whatever. That's just my view. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, because I did 2 tours in Northern Ireland, and I did a regular tour in Belfast, and then I did a Rollman tour in what we used to call Bandit Country, which is the border on Armagh, which was actually much more fun because it was much more like real soldier. But anyway. So anyway, I reject all Englishmen who say eject Scotland, because if we do that, we'll lose Ulster, and we will also be abandoning huge numbers of good loyalist Scots. And like I said, I would fight an actual full-on war with the Navy and the Air Force and the Army to defend both Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands. And there are actually 14 overseas British territories these days that I would, and basically I'd still fight to defend all of them, really. So, you know. I also retain a small but growing hope that eventually Britain and the Republic of Ireland can join in some sort of federation, because it's the truth of it is the real Irish people have far more in common with the Brits than they do with the EU. And what we have seen over the last year, or most of the year, since the fighting started in Ukraine, is that the Americans are absolutely prepared to try and destroy Europe in order to fight Russia. They don't give a shit about Western Europe at all. And the EU is just falling in with that totally. I mean, Ukraine is, even according to the United Nations, which is not a group I trust very much, but even according to the United Nations before the war started, Ukraine was probably one of the most corrupt nations in the whole wide world, and considerably more corrupt than Russia. And yet somehow they're beacons of freedom and, let's all fly the gay flag and all the rest of it. I just don't see the point, mate. So yeah, I think British nationalists, whether they be English or Scottish or Welsh or Northern Irish, the best thing we can do is to try and retain the United Kingdom of Britain and Northern Ireland, and hope to change our political system. Now, in order to do that, yes, of course, you absolutely have to get rid of the Conservative Party. You've got to destroy the current political British globalist political system, and that is especially the so-called Conservative Party, headed by the Indian banker Rishi Sunak, who no one elected, not even members of the Conservative Party. In fact, members of the Conservative Party rejected him twice, but he's just been parachuted into place. He's got to go, and so has the Conservative Party, in inverted commas, because they don't conserve anything. They're just total con jobs. Those people have to go. And this is one of the things we've got to do. Now, earlier on, and the main reason I decided I'd do this very short little stream, is I was sitting and thinking, and like, my family have been in the British Army since at least 1901. Like during the Anglo-Boer War, and my great-grandfather actually was in South Africa and on active service in 1902. He didn't see any action. He was in a blockhouse somewhere in the Orange Free State, and no one attacked him, but he was there. And then in 1914, of course, he got called up again as a reservist. And I haven't done much research on it, but as far as I can work out, his dad was also a British Army soldier who, as far as I can see, served in India at least. My grandfather served in India in the peacetime army between the wars on the northwest frontier of India. He fought against a guy called the Fakir of Ipi, some sort of fanatical Muslim idiot. And then he joined the army again in 1940, not long before his home in London was bombed flat by the Luftwaffe. Luckily, no one was in it. They were all in the Shoah. But then he went across on D+3 to Normandy and stayed there basically until quite a long time after Germany surrendered in May 1945. My dad joined the army at 18, and he did his service defending the Suez Canal zone in Egypt. All his brothers also did the same thing. One of them was in the British Army of the Rhine, another one served in Malaya. I joined the army when I was 18, and as I said, I did 2 tours in Northern Ireland. My son is currently serving in the Royal Navy. So, like, my family have been serving and trying to defend Britain for at least 120 years. And like I said, as far as I can work out, my great-grandfather was also a British Army soldier, so that would have been 1880s or something like that. And, like, you know, that's true of many, many, many other families in Britain. It's not a big deal in that point of view. But on the other end, it's not such a very small deal because, you know, it's always, when you serve in the armed forces of your country, you're putting your life on the line. So it's not tiny. Like I put my family's claims up to being British, like 1,000,000% above Rishi Sunak, for example. But whatever. So I'm not. I'm not a supporter of people who want to break up Britain. It's just not the right way to do it. And if we as right of centre, sensible centrist nationalists want to like somehow break free of the gay, the only way we're going to do that is we need to be as strong as possible. And like Britain with Scotland, with Northern Ireland, and with Wales is vastly more powerful than just with England. And like Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad, is just totally wrong about this stuff. He needs to think again. Now, I know he's been on a journey, like most of us, although I've always been more right-wing than Sargon, to be honest. But he needs to go back and think about this. The other thing he's not looking at is Britain is an island, all right? It's an island nation, and we have to import most of the stuff we need, including a lot of our food, by sea. Britain can't be autarkic. It's not possible to grow everything you need in Britain You've got to import it by sea. So you've got to have a relatively strong Royal Navy. And that Royal Navy needs to operate not just around the English coast, because, an enemy will starve you to death by sinking your ships long before they get anywhere near the English coast. So again, you've got to use a little bit of common sense about this stuff. That's just my view. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am. I've spent I'm an older bugger, and I've spent most of my life either serving in the military or reading about military and naval history. And like I said, my son, even to this day, is still serving in the Royal Navy. So, I just think Carl Benjamin needs to go back and think about this again. He might like Britain to be Belgium, but if it was Belgium, it would have to be in the EU. I'm completely anti-EU. And Britain isn't Belgium. It's an offshore island. Islands, I should say, more accurately. So, I just think we have to be very, very, very careful before those of us on the right say, oh, yeah, we want to break up Britain. Also, remember, the last time there was a referendum in Scotland, the Scottish National Party lost because the Scots are not stupid. Like Scotland gets quite a lot of financial aid from England. Scottish taxes are considerably less high than they would need to be if Scotland was independent. And there are various other things about this too. But that was my main point. I just think I hope Carl, who I like, don't dislike Carl, I hope he goes away and thinks about this a bit more and sees how the United Kingdom of Britain is a better idea than like an England, which like is, I don't know, 2 to 3 times more powerful than Belgium and has to join the EU again. I don't know how he thinks that's going to help us. I'm not at all sure. Judge Maddie in the chat is right. Biden's a plastic paddy, basically. And there are many of them in America. And they used to all give, when I was in the British Army in the 1980s, a lot of Americans used to give financial aid to NORAID, which was basically giving money to the Provisional IRA. And there were even some Protestants in America who used to give money to them, not realizing, of course, that money was used to murder Protestants in Northern Ireland. But honestly, guys, I just hope that, like I said, I'm not anti Carl Benjamin. I'm not anti the Lotus Eaters. They're a bit more left wing than I am, but I really hope that Carl goes away and thinks about this a bit more carefully and comes up with a more thought out opinion. And that was the only purpose I'm trying to make here. So anyway, there we go. And as always, I'm going to pray us out with a tune. By the way, just let me remind you, we will be back this weekend, 9 p.m. Sunday UK time, which I think is 8 a.m. Eastern Australian time, which is 2300 Greenwich Mean Time. We will be back with the first of our 2023 Splendid Isolation streams. Do come and watch those, guys. And also don't forget to sign up to our channel on Odyssey, which is like our insurance in case Susan kicks us as she well might. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to play us out of the stream with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captive steed, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check show of pride. By hopeless speech and simple, 100 times they claim to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch not that heathen folly bring all our hopes to loss. Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his soul's reward. The blame of those ye better, the haste of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humour are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian guys? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wait on God and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy young grudge praise. Come thou to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No Age with Gibbort wisdom, the judgment joy appears. Take off the white black dragon through all the fantasies.
Okay, and that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard. Please go and check out Chris Gard's really good YouTube channel. Has some great traditional music, and I know he's got a new one coming out soon, which I think most of us will like. Thanks for joining me, guys. It was only a little stream. Like I said, I'm an Anglo-Celtic nationalist. I'm not an English nationalist. I'm an Anglo-Celtic nationalist. And the Anglo-Celts of the British Isles are really, really closely related in DNA terms. So, yeah, I hope Carl Benjamin goes away and rethinks this, because I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think he hasn't thought it through properly. So go well, everybody, and we will see you for Splendid Isolation, first one of 2023 over the weekend. Have fun and go well.